I love the ripple effect of coaching because it cascades down through our teams and organizations. So if I am able to help the leader to drive in a different way and how they're leading and how they're approaching collaboration and innovation and their cultural footprint, then I know that that will cascade down into their teams and how they're leading people.
Welcome to That Pivotal Moment of Change, the podcast where we dive into the career-defining moments that shape who we become. Success, setbacks, big decisions, we unpack it all. Let's get into it. On today's episode, we welcome Uta Knablein.
Hey, Uta, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ryan. Nice to see you.
Glad you're here and looking forward to the discussion today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So why don't we talk a little bit about your background and how you got into product work?
Sure. So my journey into product work has been shaped by a mix of curiosity, creativity, and also a deep desire to really focus on real-world problems, but also real-world user problems. And I started my career in digital media, specifically in digital design. And that gave me a strong understanding, of the user needs and creating engaging experiences. I actually didn't set out to become a product leader. So I come from the experience side, from the design side. It just became sort of a natural progression. And solving for meaningful problems was really the big sort of path into it. I realized early on that product and UX are very, very, when design are intertwined. And I often transformed cultures which had, sort of those two areas defined in separate lanes. I transformed them, to become one through collaboration and just sort of like innovation and also design thinking exercises. And now after 2 decades of experience, I can look back and I can kind of connect the dots. And that's sort of the journey of, how I got into product work. Originally, I started out, one of the turning points for me was Nickelodeon. I worked there and it was actually quite a game changer for me. I led the UX team and it was the pivotal moment where there was a massive shift in the industry into mobile and tablet, devices. So it taught me really how we can take these 2 apps that we're on and really driving, into 15 apps and really translating that across those platforms and devices, and then really driving that disruption and seizing that opportunity. And then another one was when I moved into fintech with JPMorgan Chase. JPMorgan purchased, a startup called BloomSpot for $35 million way back then. And they were in the offering space. So here I kind of got a crash course in like balancing strategy and like, scale and then customer-centric design. So that was another interesting turning point for me in my career. And then Outbrain, which was SaaS and B2B. There I was able to connect like sort of the points between brands with audiences through content. It was mainly like editorial brands and connecting that into these widgets that Outbrain serves for recommendations. And then really the last one for me was iHeartMedia. I left iHeart earlier this year. I took some time off to sort of reset and recharge. And here I was able to help grow the revenue from $470 million to $1 billion and really going as the chief product officer across 250 platforms. And it was exhilarating. And it was amazing to combine like data and design and machine learning into products that redefined really what's possible in the audio space.
All of those roles sound so cool. And I can imagine the challenge you must have had at iHeart because you do have a lot of different platforms. And, I would be curious just to learn about how you thought about consistency.
Absolutely. We can definitely go very deep into this. I think the big thing was a design system that can really translate across the platforms and creates a brand translation, based on the conventions of the platforms. And that has to do a lot with research, understanding what the conventions are, also what the capabilities are, and then also where the users are meeting us and how do they want to meet us. And that was really the sort of way of thinking about it. Now, I think there are some more conversations on how we can personalize that, much more better and automate it. But then it was creating a design system on Figma and then figuring out that it's also aligned to the overarching brand of iHeartMedia.
And I know you've mentioned having an interest in executive and leadership coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're doing it. What inspired that interest?
Yeah, for sure. So when I left iHeart, one of the things that I was always drawn to was exploring sort of the framework around executive coaching as a way to really deepen my understanding of leadership and really how I'm empowering others to grow. So I think that really, the basic idea as to why I was able to join a very powerful coaching network and a very powerful coaching program. And I've been doing that. I've been certifying in it, and it will give me a great sort of foundation in my next full-time endeavor, whether it's, it's in product leadership or experience leadership, because it will help me empower everyone around me to, make and grow and thrive. So yeah, that's sort of how I thought about it. And I'm a lifelong learner, so for me that was an amazing experience as well. I love helping others to unlock their potential, and I think there's also achieving and help them achieve like the results that they want to achieve, and resilience and their transformation for the impact they want to have across people and organizations. And so coaching allowed me to sort of like explore that.
Has there been anything surprising or just really interesting that you've learned along the way that you didn't expect?
I think the lessons along the way were around the power of listening. I think that's always effective in any, leadership role, but coaching really is rooted in listening deeply. And, while we as leaders don't need answers, we do sometimes need someone to ask us the right questions and challenge our assumptions, and then guiding us to sort of clarity and confidence on some level. So I think that's the one part that has really been an epiphany for me. And then I think nothing new, but similar to how we are approaching the, problems, user problems, is tailoring the approaches to each client. That's been also interesting. Every leader is different. Every organization is unique. So, developing that sort of muscle and the ability to adapt my coaching to the individual styles and the organization needs, and balancing that with the empathy to directly make someone accountable for, the goals they're setting out to be is also something. And then a couple other ones, maybe the ripple effect. I love the ripple effect of coaching because it cascades down through our teams and organizations. So if I am able to help the leader to drive in a different way and how they're leading and how they're approaching collaboration and innovation and their cultural footprint, then I know that will cascade down into their teams and how they're leading people. So the culture will create a very strong footprint of belonging. And that's kind of, as we know, a good foundation for innovation.
Really like that, the ripple effect, the way you describe that. Moving on to some reflective questions. What are some key lessons you've learned throughout your career?
I think one is that I just mentioned a little bit is empathy. Empathy, I think, is critical for any leader. I think understanding unique challenges and, motivations of team members allows that for us to foster like this trust and collaboration and really creating a high performance in each individual, but also in teams. Adaptability is another. Industries, as you know, evolve, like market shifts right now, crazily shifting, technologies change fast. So, learning to be adaptable and being actually open to learning is really, for me, the key to drive, in a dynamic sort of environment. Another thing would be balancing sort of like the long-term vision with short-term wins. So I think some of the best results I've had was focusing on the strategies that have immediate needs with the long-term growth. So I've always championed sort of like initiatives that are having a North Star and having a larger vision, but also showing the successes of short-term, wins. And then collaboration is something, I think we talk about this obviously, all the time. I think nothing great is built in isolation. So bringing together diverse thoughts and perspectives, diverse just functions, it really creates breakthrough ideas. And then last but not least, I would probably add leading by example. I think if we are not setting the tone for our culture and our accountability, then and demonstrating that behavior, over and over with standards that we're setting, then, if we don't do that, then teams don't become strong and high performing.
What are some of the bigger challenges you faced in your career, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Oh, well, there are quite a few. I think a big one, probably one of the biggest one, is an organization that is resistant to change. I think you and I know this very well throughout our careers. I think that's the toughest challenge probably to face for anyone when we're, put into the middle of that. Aligning, the leadership around shared goals, building, trust. Even if you start a new position, how do you build trust early on? How do you create relationships? Emphasizing that through data and data-informed decision-making, it requires just an enormous amount of patience, empathy, and, sort of focus on transparency, making sure that you're communicating on all levels, on all altitudes, and again, collaboration. And then I think a second one, which maybe many can relate to these days, is the balance between innovation with tight budgets. I think we have this in many conversations, but in also many companies right now. It poses a different, a huge challenge, and it's different from when we had large innovation budgets, large marketing budgets. So, really making sure that we're making the right, investments, showcasing the ROI of digital and innovation-led initiatives, and really, really creatively reallocating, resources and prioritizing those resources is really another challenge to overcome. And then ambiguity perhaps is another one, leading through that. A lot of the mediums between media and tech industries are shifting and have been shifting. So leading teams through, this uncertainty has required me to stay calm, focused and proactive, and communicating, a clear vision so we can, understand even when the path wasn't fully formed, where we're going, to make sure that is. And I think last but not least, and that goes back to the beginning when I talked about silos, perhaps, where between product and UX teams, really breaking down silos has been something that in complex organizations is very hard. It's a major barrier to success. And I work very, very hard to to break those down by building strong cross-functional relationships, like via collaboration, and then creating processes that, create transparent communication and transparencies.
On that last one, the silos between product and UX is something that certainly comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips or pieces of advice for somebody who might be trying to break down silos within their organization?
It goes back to building that trust and really building that relationship, and make sure there are data informed sort of like, nuggets that you can bring forward and really are bridging that gap. I think it's just, I think it's less and less. My approach to product management was always to break down that silo between UX and product. And I think I think it has gotten much less, although I never really liked that design sometimes is an execution, team, or design doesn't have the seat at the table. But I think if you find the right champions, and if you champion for, those conversations, people will, sort of at some point, will bring you in, and, you're able to overcome that obstacle and make them see that they can really drive meaningful impact by breaking down those silos.
I'm going to move here into some more pivotal moment type questions. Can you share an instance where a setback or failure turned out to be a hidden opportunity?
Definitely had a lot of those. I think learning is in general a really great thing, and setbacks are never. I never see them as failures. I see them as opportunities to learning. But one of a challenging experience I faced in a large organization was navigating, sort of situations where senior leaders, like a CEO or a board members, don't really fully understand the intricacies of shifting timelines, and especially in sort of like very highly connected systems. So for example, there was a situation where a backend team needed more time to create like essential endpoints. So something that wasn't apparent at the onset. It wasn't, we hadn't, calculated for that. So this delay cascaded across other teams, and impacting like, entire project timelines and a release. So, so the challenge here is really in many cases, the lack of visibility and understanding at the executive level. And that, can sort of lead to frustration on their end and misaligned expectations, all around. So the complexity of these dependencies, where one team sort of like ripples through multiple teams, is often underestimated. And, again, like one has to champion an organizational mindset towards like adaptability and communication. So one way that I learned was to overcome this by proactive communication. So I learned the importance of setting realistic and clear expectations from the outset, and transparent status reports, and just like sometimes even visuals to make them understand the dependencies, and then advocating also for flexibility and padding, making sure that, there's always plus minus, where we're not talking about hours or days or weeks. We're talking, sort of like in more flexible terms. And, and also de-emphasizing blames, because that also can happen, that teams blame each other for, missed timelines and setbacks, optimizing the workflows. And then again, collaborative like problem solving. That's really, whether it's facilitating workshops or sprints, like I think we need to align dependencies early on and explore creative solutions to minimize, that sort of impact of delays. So sometimes we needed to jump into a sprint, right there and then to solve for this quickly, right? So these sort of workarounds, of resource allocation, time allocations really helped overcome the setbacks. And it, it taught me a lot, the sort of understanding between technical teams and leadership. Semantics is important. And leaders, CEOs don't really know all the technical details that, we sometimes have to deal with. But they appreciate, I think, the complexity of them. So there's an opportunity to be transparent with everyone and communicate when a timeline shifts as early as possible.
And speaking about communication and clarity and being transparent, did you find that you were tailoring your communication or the way you would tell a story maybe to a CEO or a leadership versus others that you worked with?
Absolutely. Storytelling on different altitudes is something that I've learned as well. That is very, very different. You certainly are catering your message and you make sure that you understand what is important and what are the important goals and objectives, for example, for a board member, for a CEO, for leadership, and what are the objectives for, middle management or for, the cascading teams that are executing. I think it's important that you don't overwhelm or underwhelm, the different altitudes here. At the same time, I like to ask also questions of what else they would like to know, because I don't want to assume that an execution team doesn't want to know about, like the overarching, sort of organizational goals. I think they want to know about that too, because they need that to understand what value they bring and how they're, impacting, the sort of like goals at large. So I think semantics and how to cater your message is very, very important. Like one other example I learned is discovery for a salesperson is a very different word and a very different concept than it is for a UXer and even for, an engineer. So making sure that you have the right definition for the words that you're using is very important as well.
So true. Can you recall a moment in your career that significantly influenced your path?
Yeah, there are those moments, and I really cherish them. I think a big pivotal moment was probably when I moved into, we just talked about altitudes, when I transition from focusing slowly on like the design and execution side to take on broader responsibilities that require just higher level perspectives. And that kind of shift gave me a new view that I needed to obviously communicate and learn, but also integrating strategy and technology and experience at a scale. But so it also opened my eyes to the importance of understanding a company's financial health, balance sheets, and cash flow. You can learn a lot from a company's cash flow. Those financial documents are more than just numbers. There's sort of like a small window that opens for you to understand, priorities, challenges, potential. And so I learned how cash flow is more than just profitability. It really highlights, whether a company has the flexibility to innovate or withstand even market challenges. So we need to know that as leaders, because that understanding transforms how we approach our strategy, our leadership, and our decision making. So I think that moment reshaped, my career, sort of emphasizing the importance of, business objectives, aligning them with operational realities and financial insights. So it shifted me from being just an executor to becoming a leader who thinks holistically and is able to make decisions that drive both immediate results and long-term impact.
What specific skills or mindsets have been crucial in navigating your career twists and turns?
Yeah, you probably hear a little bit of a theme, throughout here, but adaptability is a key one. I mean, it's just a number one for me. Fast-paced industry like media and tech, you got to stay adaptable. Empathy, another theme that I've also, brought up already, and the transparency and clear communication is vital to really lead teams through uncertainty. And then I think a last one is sort of the mindset side of continuous learning. I think it kept me ahead of the curve, and that's, I'm very curious naturally, and I love learning new things, and that also has helped me navigate sort of my career and the twists and turns. It's never linear.
It never is. And I'm going to have more questions for you and just a little bit about the continuous learning piece of it. But first, I want to ask you, with hindsight, what would you do differently in your career?
If I reflect, and I'm my own toughest critic, but if I would talk to my younger self, I probably would have changed the timing of pursuing my master's degree. I completed that degree 3 years ago during COVID, and it was really incredibly valuable for me from a framework perspective. It provided me more structured methodologies that I've already experienced and learned via my career and my experiences, practically. But it was more impactful because it gave me the academia, the research, and the theory to marry that with the practical experience. So I could list 100 more, but I think looking back, that is the one key takeaway, I would say, of leveraging, that structure earlier to accelerate, maybe to have been accelerating me a little bit further in my personal and professional growth.
Moving on a little bit here, and we will loop back around to the continuous learning piece, I promise. I do have a few more questions for you on that one, but what do you think the future of design looks like?
Oh gosh. So I'm a little bit of a geek on that one. I find it very interesting how AI is shaping, sort of our industry, and how it actually shapes it in terms of human-centered, about a connection between human-centered principles and technological advancements. So I think I would love to explore a little bit more the adaptive and like the self-healing systems of design. So I think one way could be that systems could dynamically address bugs, and evolve based on user feedback. So it's like it's almost like inspired by nature, self-repair mechanisms. So that could be interesting. I think another futuristic way of where the future of design could go is, sort of the human first AI interfaces that we are seeing are popping up, on some level. So I think empathy, again, inclusivity could create some very responsive and interesting, seamless and accessible interactions. So I think in general, the jury is going to be very interested around what AI can do for design from a human-centered, perspective. So I really think there's a lot to hope for. And so I think like nature shows a lot of perspectives and also a lot of fundamentals that I think we can probably adapt and take into the next stage for the future of design. Of course, there are problems with it too. Like, I'm sure there's like complexity that I'm not seeing, for these like self-healing systems, for example. It probably requires very sophisticated machine learning algorithms and, diagnosing, understanding and all of that. But, I like to think about these sort of things in these generative AI, terms.
It is fascinating. Since AI really hit the scene and where it is now, just really, it's just crazy to think about, even in a year or 2 years, what the conversation is going to be.
I think also with AI agents, right? And that's going to be super interesting as well. Like, how do we integrate these AI agents? I think Anthropic released, was it last month a model to use a computer, right? So I thought that was like, wow, that's so interesting for me. Yeah, so there's a lot, to look forward to, and I find it very interesting. AI and blockchain too. I forgot about that. AI and blockchain, decentralized and centralized. I think there's so much to think through. I'm so excited for what's coming. I think the one thing is that we want to make sure there's the ethic of it, and how do we, create, an approach that makes it a collaboration and not a replacement, I guess.
Kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you, going back into the continuous learning piece of it. How would you advise people, say on your team or that you're talking to in a coaching perspective, to think about continuous learning or figuring out what it is that you should be looking at? Because I feel like if you're in product or digital design, UX, whatever it might be, there are so many different avenues.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think continuous learning is something that one can take from all facets of life. So you can learn personally, you can, and sort of go and have your personal passions be explored, and then also professionally. There are so many avenues. I think people forget the resources that we have available to look at learning from all different perspectives. And I think there's a gap between failure and success. A lot of people that are, sort of like I'm coaching right now, have a fear, for example, of failure. And they are not ready. There's a little bit of ego in how they're approaching learning, because they think, oh, I think I might know everything because I'm already a CEO, or I'm already like a C-suite executive. They think that that is enough for them. But at the end of the day, if you as a CEO are not continuous learning, and you don't have soft skills that are constantly are being renewed and refreshed and adapted to where your team and your team members are, then you are making yourself a disservice, and you also are not able to drive growth and innovation in the environment. So I think that's one part. Somebody on the team that I would be leading, and how I would sort of try to motivate them or try to inspire them to continue and grow, is how I set goals with them, right? So I think I would make it an accountable conversation and let them give me ideas of where they think they should be learning. Obviously, I have some ideas from assessments and things like that to also add to that. But I think everyone has ideas in how they can develop. I think as managers, we can give additional tools and additional inspirations to where someone is going, but we can't force someone to learn. If you are a lifelong learner, then, and if you want to change and if you want to get ahead in your career, I think you need to make that decision for yourself. You have to be proactive about, the understanding that you want to learn, or that you need to learn more things. And I think this is also something on some level that coaching has helped me and also has given me, from a tool set and framework perspective. I'm able to drive the data that I take from the assessments that I'm doing for, the clients that I'm working with. And I'm able to show the opportunities, the edge that they are, that are good at, the things that, the strengths that, they could be driving and even building on, but also making sure that they know that there are other gaps that they could be filling to really become more of an impact, for themselves in the organization, their work.
Who have been your most significant mentors or influencers, and what are key lessons you've learned from those people?
In general, I've had some really, really, really good mentors and influencers. And for me, it is about creating a board of directors. It's really a diverse group of people from different industries that help me navigate career strategic decisions, that ask the right questions and figure out with me where to challenge my thinking, how to open doors to new opportunities, and provide guidance, I guess, on some level. And it's not a formal board. It's really more like intentional, sort of people mentors that, understand my growth paths and, advocate for me, are honest with their feedback and, able to connect me to expand, my network. So I think I regularly engage with this group, and it's been quite transformative because it sort of helps me navigate the challenges and, as I said, like staying aligned with my long-term goals.
What advice would you give to someone earlier in their career who is still trying to figure things out? And what advice would you give to a more experienced leader? Would it be different advice? Same thing?
It would be nuanced. I think there are similarity on some level when I think about it. The professionals that I'm coaching right now that are a little bit more on the junior side, so to speak, I would say I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern. And if you are someone that is thirsty for knowledge and for exploration and, curiosity, and if you're open to trying new paths, I've seen that is a really nice success formula. You don't have to have it all figured out. Like, just embracing mistakes and, like, as stepping stones, and focusing on building like universal skills like communication, critical thinking, and adaptability again, which, keeps one prepared for any challenge. So I would say, Ryan, it's the same. I would also probably say to someone that is a little bit more advanced in their career and also maybe even on the leadership side already. The other thing is, at the same time, across all professionals, I would say map out a career path or a career plan, like a hydration strategy. Like, I like to call it hydration strategy for like for the journey ahead. Like, it can evolve, but it gives you clarity on your vision, on your values, on your strengths, like I said earlier, and on your edge. And it guides you through the growth that you find meaningful. So discovering, that focus that excites you and fulfills you, allows, sort of like, and allowing that plan to adapt as you learn is something that I would probably take as a second. And then system thinking. I think system thinking is also something I would probably take as a conversation exploration here, seeing the bigger picture of one's career and understanding how decisions fit in within the broader industry, the organization, find loops or feedback loops or like spot patterns to navigate, sort of uncertainty and build a resiliency to this ecosystem of skills and the networks that supports the long-term success of an individual. So I think those are the ones that I would say, I would maybe advise on, or at least I would have a conversation around it. Often people know sort of already what the wisdom is inside of them. You just have to tickle it out. And that goes back to coaching.
So moving into some closing questions, what is your favorite quote?
That's a tough question. I have so many different favorite quotes. One that I recently heard is interesting at the same time. It's give them roots, then give them wings. So I can really apply that to both, right? Personal, to my 3 sons. It's a heartbreak. You prepare them for life and they fly out and it's like, oh no, it's the mother's heartbreak. But then in business, I think the greatest legacies that we can have as leaders or, as managers is to how we inspire and empower those, right? We lead. Not just, grounding themselves in the purpose and clarity, but also how we empower them to take leaps with confidence and autonomy, So I think that's the true leadership art, guiding like with intention, nurturing, their growth, and then stepping back and letting them soar, and knowing that their success is a reflection of the seeds we have sown. Oh my goodness, that sounds so poetic.
It's a great quote. I really like that.
Yeah.
I've not heard that one before. Yeah, I really do. I really do like that. For anyone, really. I mean, you could say it's, I think, a great quote for just someone in a leadership position to think about, but it's really a great quote for anyone to think about, whether it's mentorship or, just being a good colleague. I like that a lot.
Totally.
There is a lot of great content out there. What are you looking at now that you would recommend to others?
I have started to read timeless books, if that makes any sense. I don't know why. I'm kind of going back to Simon Sinek, for example. I love him. He is absolutely amazing. He has timeless principles and how he leads with purpose, and he inspires me every day. I think he's fantastic. Dare to Lead from Brené Brown. That's like amazing. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, a timeless favorite by Patrick Lencioni. Lean In is something I've reread now 3 times by Sheryl Sandberg. I'm reading a lot of books. The Art of War. And then I think I follow quite a few people, and they pop up on my feed. So, for example, Andrew DeSouza, he's the co-founder of ClearCode. I love how he thinks about scaling startups and leadership in tech. I love Julian Varley from OK Cool. He is so refreshing. He brings really forward-thinking ideas to branding. And Jordan Belfort, I just read his book on high-stakes decision-making, and I thought that was fantastic. Sol Rashidi, if you have not heard of her, if you don't follow her, she's an absolute amazing leader in AI and data strategy. There are so many different, influencers that, sort of pop up on my different feeds, whether it's snackable content or long form, and then I will go down a rabbit hole and just, read more up on it. One other one I recently came across is Jana Barstow. Do you know who she is?
The name is so familiar.
You probably know when I say the next bit. I don't think she's the inventor of it, but she sort of like reinvented the now, next, later roadmap. So it's just interesting, how we utilize and navigate the problematic nature, really, of committing to specific timelines, which we talked earlier about on, right? It's just sort of like on the leadership side. So I love this. I love her way of thinking about it. We definitely, I've been exploring the implementation of it, and I saw great successes. So that's kind of it. I mean, I love reading books right now. I know it sounds weird, and then just reading the feeds, the articles, and then going further on this.
You just dropped so many incredible resources, some of which I was familiar with, some I am not. But that was awesome, and I will pull all of those out and put them in show notes. I think some amazing examples there. And lastly, where can people find you?
Oh, absolutely, on LinkedIn, of course. And then also on my website, utaknablein.com.
Uta, thank you so much for being here. I think this was great. I'm really looking forward to getting this episode out there.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
That's it for today's episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop a comment with your thoughts, like this episode if it resonated with you, and share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to follow so you never miss an episode. Thanks for being part of this journey with us. Until next time.